Hello, and welcome to Grey.com Talks With. Today, we're talking with Julie Murphy, President and Executive Director at Partners for Women and Justice, an organization that empowers low-income survivors of domestic violence to build safe and secure futures for themselves and their children by providing equal access to justice. And if you're new to our podcast, please press subscribe button either on YouTube or your podcast app, because today we're going to learn about the urgency of the issue of domestic violence and how we can take part in supporting the survivors of such violence. Hello, Julie. Welcome to Grey.com Talks With. Very excited to have you here.
Thank you. It's nice to be here.
Wonderful. How would you describe your organization to someone who is not familiar with your work?
So our organization is a nonprofit that provides legal services to low-income victims and survivors of domestic violence and sexual assault. And the breakdown of, we serve 5 counties in New Jersey, mainly North Jersey, right outside of New York City. And I've been here a year, and what strikes me about the communities that we serve is that they are incredibly diverse. So 50% of our clients are Hispanic, 17% of our clients are Black. 17% of our clients are white, and 27% of our clients are Black. So we are served, and then there's multiracial and Asian, but the overwhelming majority of our clients are people of color because the communities we're serving are people of color. And there's a lot of poverty in the counties that we're serving. So we're dealing with multiple issues, not just domestic violence, but also racial injustice, poverty, police issues with a lot of our clients are afraid to call the police to get protection because they don't trust that they're going to be treated well or their abuser will be treated well.
Mm. So you provide justice and legal help for the members of the community of Northern New Jersey. But however, those help covers a wide range of issues: domestic violence, you mentioned, racial inequality, police brutality. And those are some of the urgent issues that have been on the news, as well on the minds of many Americans and many New Jerseyans, I believe, as well.
Yeah. And I think what we're really aware of is we're part of the anti-violence community, but anti-violence has to be anti-racist too, because the issues are so interconnected. So what we do is we provide legal services. I have a staff of lawyers, and we also have a pro bono program where we go to some of the large and medium-sized and small law firms in New Jersey and people volunteer to represent our clients. So we're able to serve more clients because of our volunteer program. And it's great because if you're working in a large law firm and you're maybe a young associate, you're not going to get into court for a long time. So being able to go into court and argue a case and really impact someone's life can be really exciting and educational. So we see the pro bono program as mentoring and educating attorneys on our issues, but also on the practice of law.
I understand the benefits of such pro bono cases for law firms. You mentioned that it's a practice. However, it's a great benefit for the people who are the clients as well, because usually it's quite an expensive process, and having someone to support you in no fee or small fee takes a lot of burden out of the shoulders of many people who are afraid to speak or just don't believe that their voices will be heard. Can you please...
Go ahead.
Can you please describe what is domestic violence and what are some of the forms of it? Because we know about the physical forms of the violence, but when it comes to domestic violence, there are so many types of it.
Yes. So domestic violence is really all about power and control. And there's sort of a myth that domestic violence only happens with men abusing women. But we have clients, we have male clients, we have lesbian clients, we have gay male clients. So it's really power and control within an intimate partner situation. And the way that abusive people exert power and control is physical or sexual abuse, threats, emotional manipulation, and it comes out in lots of different ways. There's cyberbullying. There a lot of abuse is psychological. So telling someone they're worthless, telling someone no one would ever want them, making them believe they have to stay. So there's the power and control is really the big dynamic in the relationship. And a lot of people don't understand why someone in an abusive relationship would stay. And one of the things that happens with someone who's exerting power and control is they often alienate friends and family members. So if they forbid their partner to see their family over and over and over again, the family gets annoyed and just says, forget it. So often the person being abused is extremely isolated, has no support, has no one to talk to, and it just makes that situation more profound.
Mm. Wow, that's extremely sad, because when you feel that you are being manipulated, yet you can't ask for help because you have been isolated from your friends, you have been isolated from family members, and people don't take care about you anymore. That's quite sad and very heartbreaking.
Yeah. And one thing I wanted to mention, because I think it's very important, the pandemic in the last year has just had a huge impact in domestic violence. So what we're seeing is that the frequency of abuse and the severity of incidents has escalated because of the pressure from the pandemic. And the pandemic has really impacted people's jobs, their housing situations, and our clients are all low income. So if someone in the household loses a job, the frequency of the violence probably goes up. And the hotline calls in the state of New Jersey sort of reflect that there were months, especially last year, where our intake was higher than usual. The calls, and the scary thing was the first couple of months, there was almost no one calling. So the pandemic made people scared to leave their homes or reach out. And our police departments were shut down for a couple of months. So it's like a powder keg, all that pressure, and our clients really paid the price.
So there's a direct correlation between losing a job, poverty, financial stability, housing, with the occurrence and frequency of domestic violence. Because when there is so much pressure in the family, then the issues arise, and the victims, knowing that they have no option, whether leaving because they don't have a job or they don't have a housing, they have to remain in in a condition that may be unbearable for them.
Yeah.
How often do the victims speak out, and how often do the victims of domestic violence seek justice?
It's actually not as often as you would think. So one act of domestic violence occurs every 8 minutes and 29 seconds in New Jersey. So if you think about that kind of those numbers and that frequency, you would think that the courts are overrun. And we serve about 400 clients a year. And the kind of work that we do is we help a client or someone who's in an abusive relationship can either call the police or go to the courts and apply for a temporary restraining order. And that basically, and their abuser would be served with that. And it basically says you can't come in contact with this person. You can't come within a certain number of feet. You can't call them. You can't text them. You can't have anything to do with them. And then within a certain amount of time, the two parties go to court, and that's where we represent them. And we try to get a final restraining order, child support, safe visitation arrangements. Sometimes our clients drop their kids off in front of the police station if they're afraid that their abuser is going to be violent towards them in the transfer of kids, which often happens. And then custody. So the financial support is really important, because if you want to leave and the money is all controlled by the abuser, which often is the case, you really have to secure financial means to go somewhere else and perhaps get an apartment or go live with a friend or whatever. And the statistics is if you go to court on a final restraining order with an attorney, you're 10 times more likely to get the relief you're looking for than if you go in by yourself. So people that go in unrepresented have a really difficult time because our legal system is pretty complex. They don't know that they can ask for child support. They don't know that they can ask for custody. And often the courts are so overrun that no one actually tells them, hey, when you go in there, ask for this or say this to the judge. So the fact that if you can get representation, it makes the world of difference in what happens.
That's quite a shocking number, that if you have a representation or a lawyer, you're 10 times more likely to get a positive response, a response that will be you and your family will be satisfied with, without having all the negativity and all the worries that this wasn't the right decision. Why is it the case? Does the U.S. justice system support the victims of domestic violence? Does it take the issue of domestic violence seriously?
I think the United States does take it seriously, and each state has its own laws. And New Jersey, from what I'm told by my attorneys, has one of the better domestic violence laws. And we have also a sexual assault law that's quite progressive. It's probably it goes to the nature of the court system. There's a lot of cases. They're trying to move it through. And with COVID, we're now doing much of our cases are done via Zoom with everyone in different locations. So it's just the courts are overrun with a lot of cases, and there is sort of the inclination to move people through. And domestic violence is really difficult to hear in court because everyone's very emotional. And so it's, they're not, those cases, they're not model litigants sitting in front of a judge. Everyone's not sitting there very calm and peaceful and talking rationally. Sometimes there's very high emotions. So having an attorney be able to stand up and argue the case for you is really important.
Mm. Yes, because you mentioned in most of the cases it's a relationship issue. The domestic violence comes from the relationship where there is power control, and then a lot of emotions are involved.
One of the things that happens in court, years ago, I started as an attorney working in domestic violence, and then I went into nonprofit management. But I remember having clients going in for a temporary restraining order or a final restraining order, and the client would be, really upset and sad and fearful. And sometimes you'd get in front of the judge and my client would start yelling at her husband or boyfriend. And I'd be like, who is this person? And what I realized is it was the first time she felt safe to say what she thought. And so the judges would get angry and say, what's wrong with your client? But it's like, it's so emotional. People are so scared. And your clients don't always act like model
Plaintiffs.
Litigants,
Wow. Being in a safe environment allows you to speak up, and courts are one of those places where people can feel safe.
Yes.
We talked about several reasons behind the occurrence of domestic violence. How can government or the society itself do things so that the cases of the domestic violence, instead of rising, it decreases?
That's a big question. I think there are a number of things. In addition to our attorneys, we have an attorney on staff who does advocacy and policy work. And she is working this past year around COVID. She has worked really closely with the courts in trying to get policies and procedures in place to help protect victims of domestic violence. So and she's worked with state senators in legislation to make sure our laws are supporting victims rather than hurting them. And there's all kinds of things that on its face looks great, like criminal justice reform of releasing prisoners from jail early. In domestic violence situations, we want to make sure that victims know that their abusers are about to be released from jail, so that they know that they might have to take some action to be safe. But there's all this nuance around domestic violence that the courts sometimes don't understand, and the legislatures don't understand, and we help educate them and give recommendations on the best way for the courts to manage this process. I think there's a lot of organizations helping victims, but I think also, gun violence is also an issue in domestic violence. And everyone knows in the United States that if there's guns in the house, there's a higher likelihood of them being used against each other. And so one of the things we want to make sure is if a woman gets a final restraining order, if there's guns in the house, the police go and seize the guns. So there's so many issues that impact victims and survivors. And we are the experts. There's many other organizations in the state that are experts. So I would say if you want to help support us to serve as many people as we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree that the issue is very complex. There's so many factors that lead to domestic violence, and there's so many factors post the occurrence and the frequency of the domestic violence. But the fact that there are such experts as your organizations who are advocating for more laws and advocating and informing policymakers about the nuances, about the details surrounding this issue gives a hope in terms of the legislation being more supportive of the victims and more proactive in terms of reacting post factum.
Yep.
If someone would like to support Partners for Women and Justice, how can they do that?
Well, they could go to our website, which is, let me just bring it up so that I say the right name. It's P as in Paul, F as in Frank, W, J as in justice.org. So we're Partners for Women in Justice, and it's pfwj.org. And we have there's a donate section of that that they can give money. We also have a volunteer section where if an attorney in our area is interested in volunteering, they can give us a call. And also, we're on social media. So, like our posts on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, and just find out more about what we do and the issue of domestic violence and sexual assault in New Jersey.
Mm-hmm. The links to the website of Partners for Women and Justice, as well as all their social media links and the donate page of the website will be provided in the links in this description. And if you listening would like to support and learn more about the organization, you can definitely do that. Thank you so much, Julie. It was my pleasure to get to know you and the wonderful work that your organization are doing in supporting the victims of domestic violence.
Thank you so much.
For you listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, please press like and share button because this will show the YouTube and podcast algorithm that this issue is important. We need more help for the domestic violence survivors and victims, and they need representation. As mentioned in this case, in this interview, if the domestic violence survivor and victim has a representation, they're 10 times more likely to get a positive result in their court. Thank you and see you in the next episode.